Kinda wondering if that will work. Yeah, it should work. It even seems to be live. What a silly idea this is, but at the same time, an idea that I kinda wanted to put into life for some time. I even recorded this a few times. Well, no, not a few times. Well, that was one prolonged recording session with many takes. And I thought to myself that a more effective approach might be to simply just kind of try live reading through it, which will probably lead to disappointment on all fronts, but at the same time, maybe a little bit of progress. Also, I was kind of supposed to read... Wait a second, here's my window. I was also kind of supposed to maybe one day get to read these interesting creations of this one writer here. Yes. Alright, so. Useful notes on objectivism. Yes. What is the difference between a man and a parasite? A man builds. A parasite asks, "Where is my share?" A man creates. A parasite even, singular, says, "What will the neighbors think?" A man invents. A parasite says, "Watch out, or you might tread on the toes of God." Quote from apparently Andrew Ryan from Bioshock. Yes, I think I even remember him saying that. That was a game that I didn't quite have the patience for in the end, but... Well, first 2/3 were good, yes. Or 3/4 maybe even. A philosophy inseparably connected to the name of its creator. And namer, Russian... Oh, namer also. Okay. Russian-American writer Ayn Rand. Not sure if it's Ayn or Ayn. Ayn Rand? Ayn Rand. I think it's something in between A and E. Alright. Plato divided philosophy into 4 primary branches. Metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and politics. Yeah, I guess. Objectivism has positions in each of these areas. And first we shall go through metaphysics. Alright, metaphysics is the study of existence, also known as ontology, as well as the basic substances which make it up, also known as cosmology. Rand argued, following Aristotle, that ontology was the proper area of metaphysics and that cosmology should be reserved for the physical sciences. I kinda know what ontology is. I'm not entirely sure what they mean by cosmology here, but okay. Thus, objectivist metaphysics is confined to an ontology. Alright. What is ontology? Ontology... Stupid wheels. Ontology is the study of what it means to exist. This is probably the most mind-screwy it gets, because that which exists is a broad category. However, the basic questions of ontology can be summarized as follows. Is there something? And if there is something, does it exist independently or of my consciousness? Alright. Oh, yes, that little bit. When you were a child and you thought that by closing your eyes you could make something you dislike go away, well, that was your younger self hoping that the thing you didn't like existed in a way that depended on your consciousness. Objectivism argues that, point number 1, there is something. Point number 2, that it exists independently of your consciousness, and you can't simply think it into non-existence. Philip K. Dick, no objectivist himself, nevertheless articulated a definition of reality that many objectivists can agree with. Reality is that which, if you stop believing in it, does not go away. I think I have stumbled upon this definition, and I quite frankly also kind of like it. That doesn't mean that I wholeheartedly support it, because I still consider that like an open matter. For all I know, the reality might be effectively not existing beyond the scope of my perception. It's just not loaded for CPU cycles, budgetary reasons. Yes, you may ask, how can I know this? How can you know this? How can Ayn Rand know this? The problem with asking that, according to objectivists, is in order to know something, that something must exist in the first place. Objectivist metaphysics thus stipulates 3 axioms. Yes, i.e., undeniable, irreducible facts describe how reality works. Once again, we get to points. Number 1. Existence exists, which is there is something. Point number 2. Everything that exists has a specific nature or identity. A is A, or a thing is what it is. A thing must be something, otherwise it is nothing. Point number 3. You exist. And you exist possessing consciousness, no less, which is the faculty of perceiving that which exists. The theory suggests that these facts are undeniable because to deny them requires them to be true. If you deny that existence exists, you have to exist, because only entities can perform an action, like denying something. Additionally, this denial assumes you have a consciousness which allows you to think and perceive, and even process information. Oh my god, so many things. Notions such as proof and knowledge, I could actually get rid of this cursor, yes. Notions such as proof and knowledge all presuppose these 3 axioms. Thus, these axioms cannot be proven deductively, because deduction requires these axioms. Specifically, A is required for deductive logic to work in the first place. Yes. It is on the basis of these axioms that objectivism embraces atheism. According to objectivism, reality must exist independently of consciousness. Any consciousness. This means the idea of creation ex nihilo, that God created existence from nothing by sheer force of will, is a fallacy, according to objectivism. Additionally, an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God conflicts with the law of identity, i.e., if a thing is what it is only what it is and not anything else, and thus must be specific and finite. Even though I would vote for pronouncing this word as finite, but yes, because since we have infinite, then we should have finite. I think that should be consistent. Stupid language. Regardless of the above, the objectivist position is that reality is real, you can't think it away, and all knowledge assumes that existence exists and things are what they are, i.e., there is something to know, and a knower with the capacity to know also exists, i.e., you exist possessing consciousness. The inverse position to Rand's is that existence is dependent on consciousness, or a consciousness, in at least some respect. This contrasting position is called metaphysical idealism, whereas Rand's is referred to as metaphysical objectivism, with a lowercase o. Rand's position was also shared by Aristotle, although Aristotle was a deist rather than an atheist. Yeah, but at the same time Aristotle was... In what way was he a deist? Like, his perception of a deity might be slightly different to our perception of deity, I think. Epistemology. Yes, we go to a new mini-section on epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. Classical epistemological problems include things like how can we know something, and do humans discover the truth through faith or reasoning, or both? Rand described her epistemology as reason, but this is a very insufficient description. Many philosophers advocate reason, but they all have different pictures of how this faculty actually works. Yes. So, how did Rand argue reason operated? Typically, there are two types of theory about how reason operates. The first is called rationalism, which states that people have inborn ideas within their minds, often called a priori or innate ideas. And reason works by making logical deductions from these two sources. In short, rationalism argues that human knowledge comes not from observation, but from deducing everything from first principles. Philosophers that supported this position include René Descartes, apparently that's how you read that name, not René Descartes, and Baruch Spinoza. The contrasting position to this is called empiricism, which argues that people are born without any abstract knowledge, i.e. born tabula rasa, a blank slate, and must generate it from observation of concrete reality. In short, all knowledge must ultimately be based in experience. Philosophers that supported this position include John Locke, Aristotle, and David Hume. A cautionary note: not all rationalists deny the usefulness of empirical knowledge. René Descartes, for instance, supported the scientific method, which is arguably practical empiricism, and not all use of logical deduction from a first principle counts as rationalism. Additionally, most empiricists do not believe deduction is worthless. They simply argue that the first principles must be empirically proven. This position is called empirical foundationalism, and the majority of logical deduction that occurs is of this type. Alright. And Rand was an empiricist. She argued that ultimately all knowledge and deduction had to rest on empirical facts, and that our senses were our point of contact with reality. She believed that humans had no built-in ideas and had to build their ideas from observations. Rand's own writing on epistemology focused predominantly on two questions: the nature of perception and the problem of universals. Prepare for more mind screw, for these answers will be outlined. Universals. I remember those. Vaguely. Since empiricists like Rand base all knowledge on sensory information, the question of the reliability of perception is important to her case. This argument, are we all just seeing one giant illusion, became really popular in the aftermath of The Matrix. However, there are basically two theories about perception that empiricists like Rand are torn between. The first is direct realism, which states that we perceive objects directly. If you see a soda can before you, it is actually the soda can outside your head that you are seeing. The second is indirect or representational realism, which argues that the world we experience with our senses is our own consciousness's representation of things outside our head. In short, the sensory inputs get processed through a series of mental sorting devices that make sense of things before they hit our perception. Basically, the world we experience is a movie playing inside our own heads, based on what our senses pick up. This position may seem needlessly complicated, but is actually very common. Philosophers like René Descartes and Immanuel Kant accepted it, and Kant's own version of representational realism was incredibly influential on his own intellectual successors, who in turn were amazingly influential on various political and philosophical movements. Rand was a direct realist. Objectivism argues we do perceive reality itself, but we use a specific means to do it. This takes into account that our senses do indeed have a specific nature, and thus they do operate in a specific way, this being the fact that motivated many representational realists in the first place. This is no place for a full treatment of Rand's account. A comprehensive review, for those who are willing to let the mind screw get into full-on mind rape territory, can be found in Dr. David Kelly's The Evidence of the Senses. Cognition and Brain Theory, Summer, Fall, 1984, blah, 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 blah. Should I try to read that, perhaps? Because this was actually getting interesting. The other problem Rand's writings focused on a lot is wait, seriously? We are like dropping this topic now, like completely at this point? Like seriously, it was just getting interesting. Disappointed I am. Anyway, the other problem Rand's writings focused on a lot is the problem of universals. The problem of universals is a very old problem that dates back to a lot of epileptic trees level academic wank between a number of Catholic theologians about the Holy Trinity. That's one way of putting it. Basically, the problem of universals deals with why we put slightly different things into the same categories. You are currently reading this article on a computer. Or listening to this article on a phone, perhaps. I don't know. Technology. If you aren't, pretend that you are. Okay. In virtue of what is it a computer? What? That was a full stop. Okay. You are currently reading this article on a computer. In virtue of what is it a computer? It may not have the same CPU as other computers. It may look different. It may have a different graphics card. Yet all these different devices are placed into the same category. Why? I'm pretty sure that one sentence needs correcting, but okay. There are 4 answers to this question. The first is Platonic, or transcendent realism, which says that there is a form of computerness that resides in a perfect heaven-like realm, and we automatically recognize that the objects we call computers participate in the form of the computer. Plato originated this theory, unsurprisingly. The second answer is moderate, or Aristotelian realism, also called essentialism, which argues that a substance or essence of computerness exists within the computer. Aristotle advanced this theory, and given Rand's reverence of Aristotle, some people interpret Rand as being a moderate realist. This, however, is a mistake. The key thing about both of these theories is that the universal, or category, exists entirely outside our consciousness. It is completely independent of our consciousness, just like reality. The third answer is nominalism, which argues that the universal is merely a name that people assign to the object. As Rosalind, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce this name, one of the theologians in the original theological wankfest, described nominalism, these names are just the blowing of the voice, and are assigned for reasons that may have no relationship to external reality at all. The key thing about nominalism is that whereas realism makes the category exist independently of our consciousness, nominalism makes the category exist independently of reality and dependent exclusively on our consciousness. There is, however, a 4th answer to the problem of universals. And it is this 4th answer that Objectivism subscribes to. And it is critically important to grasp this answer in order to make sense of Rand's meta-ethics. This answer is conceptualism, which states that universals are dependent on both consciousness and reality. The human mind makes abstractions from empirical data. Reality provides the data. The human mind provides the process of abstraction, which is a learned process that must be performed by a specific method. Note that Rand herself denied she was a conceptualist. However, as Saint André, 2002, Conceptualism in Abelard and Rand, argues, this was because she misunderstood conceptualism. Objectivist philosopher Dr. Carolyn Ray also identifies Objectivism as conceptualist in her own doctoral dissertation. See chapter blah 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 blah. Okay. Regardless, objectivist epistemology can generally be categorized as a form of empiricism that supports direct realism and conceptualism. All right. I am still a little bit disappointed on that delivery on the details and that objectivism. But, yes. Logical fallacies would be the next point. How long is it? It's not very long. We will be splitting this into 2 episodes, I think. But at the same time, this we could still proceed on reading, I think. So yes, on to the topic of logical fallacies. In light of the above, Rand argued that there are 2 features to the nature of knowledge that are often missed. The first is that concepts exist in hierarchy. Certain ideas assume certain others to be true. Remember how above in the metaphysics section I said axioms cannot be deductively proven? Well, this is because they are the ideas that all other ideas assume to be true. Mind screw enough? No, this is not mind screw, shut up. Let's simplify. Let's take the following comedic syllogism. Premise 1. Ayn Rand was a woman. Premise 2. All women are bitches. Conclusion. Ayn Rand was a bitch. Please note that the accuracy of any of these premises or conclusions is not the point. The logic is perfectly valid. The conclusion logically depends on the premises. The premises can thus be said to imply the conclusion. The conclusion assumes the premises to be true. The same applies to concepts. Certain concepts assume that other concepts are valid, i.e., refer to things in reality. For instance, the concept of orphan, a person without living parents, assumes that there are such things as parents. The point is that certain ideas depend on the correctness of other ideas. There is a hierarchy of ideas where certain ideas assume other ideas to be true. And ultimately, the axioms are at the base of this hierarchy, since all ideas assume the axioms to be true. Rand identified many arguments that ignore this fact. For instance, the phrase, "Why did my background just blink on me? What was that?" Never mind. Yes. For instance, the phrase, "reality is an illusion," ignores this fact when read literally in English. The concept illusion refers to a falsification of reality, and if there is no reality in the first place, there is nothing to falsify. The existence of reality is a prerequisite or assumption of the existence of illusions. This is a statement which, according to Rand, denies its own assumptions. She referred to this fallacy as the fallacy of the stolen concept. The second point about knowledge that Rand placed great emphasis on was that knowledge is contextual, i.e., it is knowledge about something in particular and thus only applies to that particular thing. Concepts have a context. This is also often missed to catastrophic results. Concepts have a context. potentially interesting. This fallacy, taking an idea relevant in one context and dropping it into a completely different context, is known as context dropping. It is more empirical than the stolen concept fallacy and can also be said to apply when any idea derived from set of experiences A is employed in set of experiences B without any modifications to adjust for the different sets of experiences. In conclusion, Rand emphasized the logical hierarchy and empirical contextuality of knowledge. Okay. So far, so good. And we have just crossed the half-an-hour mark. I don't think Twitch likes such shorter streaming format, but I frankly am not sufficiently persuaded to care, I think. Because this will be the point where we cut off for tonight. All right. This might continue. I probably shouldn't promise things, because when I promise things I am exceptionally bad at delivering on those promises, but the intent is to continue this. We shall see how influential that intent is. Yes, let's measure it in, let's measure its influence or influentialness thing. So that would be it, and I shall bid you farewell for now.